That was one of the most fun things that I've ever gotten to do, was be guest editor at Vanity Fair. You know, it's one of those things that you throw out there as a suggestion. Why don't you let me edit one? You just don't think they're gonna let you do it.
This piece here was 1992 or something. I think I had Photoshop 2.0. I was the only photographer that I knew that had Photoshop.
The best part of the day, though, was in order to get that attitude from Steve Martin, you know, he was, pretending to be the tour guide. He started doing the voice that he does like in The Jerk.
You were going into a world where all the dysfunction, all the pain, all the stuff was like right there. And every cliche that I'd ever seen in a prison movie was there.
I've had the rare opportunity to meet many amazing photographers who move through the different landscapes to create powerful images. I'm always inspired by how these images transform the way we see people and understand the world. A great photograph needs no explanation, but on Capture, these incredible people tell the story of creating their most memorable images. I'm Mark Seliger, and this is Capture.
Hi, I'm Mark Seliger, and welcome to Capture. On the show today, I am extremely lucky and fortunate to have two people who I adore. Judd Apatow, incredible filmmaker, director, writer, producer, and my friend Matt Mahurin, illustrator, painter, filmmaker, photographer. It's great to have both of you here and looking forward to our conversation. Judd, we worked on the comedy issue together for Vanity Fair, and we talked about everything. You looked at every single photo. So you were not only an editor-in-chief, you're also a photo editor.
My resume is getting thicker.
Yeah.
That was one of the most fun things that I've ever gotten to do, was to be guest editor at Vanity Fair. It's one of those things that you throw out there as a suggestion at a meeting at Vanity Fair, like, why don't you let me edit one? You just don't think they're gonna let you do it. And then you think if they're gonna let you do it, they're not really gonna let you do it. It's gonna be kind of in name only, but they actually let me get deeply involved. And it took about 6-7 months, the whole project. And when it ends suddenly. Like there's like one day where they go, we're locked. And then suddenly they don't talk to you ever again.
Yeah, there's no more phone calls.
It feels like you were fired.
Now you know what the actors feel like on a film. When they're done, goodbye, thank you, off the set, good applause, and then you continue on. They're like on a plane back home saying, God, I hope it works.
Here's your $2 billion.
Exactly.
And,
$2 billion.
And when you get that like weird nervous breakdown people have, like if you've shot a movie for 4 months as an actor and it just ends, but it ends on such a dime. But with an actor, it's worse because you just don't know if they're going to use your good performance or your bad performance. Maybe you're about to be humiliated by the movie. Maybe you're going to be winning awards. So that vulnerability of that must be brutal.
Matt started off as a painter, and your early work had a photographic quality to it, but it was not in camera. It was all just on canvas painting, and then you turned to painting on photographs. Was that the next process?
Yes, this was a piece for Rolling Stone on gang members, Bloods and Crips. So I went to LA, met them in downtown LA, shot them, and then took those photographs home and used them as a basis for creating the image.
This was pre-computer.
Yeah.
You know.
Well, this image here, this was me in my apartment. I just basically took a picture of myself, kind of chomping into my arm. And then I made a print, and then I painted blood, and I painted the bomb in, and the shadows, and kind of scumbled this and drew back into it, and then rephotographed that, and then printed it as a photograph. This piece here was an early Time cover, like 1992 or something, and I think I had Photoshop 2.0. I was the only illustrator or photographer that I knew that had Photoshop, and so that's actually me. I painted my beard white, and you actually had long hair, and this is my hair sticking out underneath from the bald wig. Changed the color of my eyes, and my girlfriend came home, and there's Freud in the apartment. I looked like a combination between my dad and Freud, so that made for some fun. When I did this, and I brought it into the editors at Time magazine, they said, where'd you get this picture of Freud? There were no colored pictures of Freud. And I said, this is me. And I used myself. And this is how far it's come, is that the editors of Time could not grasp the concept that you could go in and take a picture and move it all around and do this stuff to it. And basically, they were so nervous and didn't really believe me that it was me, that when they did the inside, they credited the Bettman archive, because they figured I used some reference material, when in fact, I just looked at it, but this is me, you know? Anyway, so that's what it turned into, and then I started using myself. This is me, another time cover on Caveman, Early Man. So I would take a picture of myself, very basic Photoshop things, and just change the scale, and I put a little makeup on me, and then the hair and the ears, that stuff's all drawn. And the cool thing about this image is that the reflection of my eye is actually the New York City skyline. So it's almost like this man, ancient, kind of looking back into the future.
And speaking of having a self-portrait or being in a photograph, this is I think this is your Hitchcock moment in Vanity Fair, right? This was a photograph that we did together with Steve Martin.
I walked up to his house when I was 13 years old and asked him for his autograph, and he said no, as he should, because I would call the police if people came to my house. And then I wrote him a letter saying, you know, if you don't send me an apology, I'm going to send your address to Homes of the Stars, and you're going to have tour buses passing about 24 hours a day. And then he sent me a book. And this is in 1980.
Wow.
And so it's 33 years ago. And in the book he wrote, "To Judd, I'm sorry, I didn't realize I was speaking to the Judd Apatow." And I was 13, and it had a big effect on me because I felt like I made him laugh. I made him laugh enough for him to send me a book and write something funny in it. And so then we asked him if he wanted to photograph for the issue, and he said, "Oh, well, we should do it where I'm the tour guide and I'm bugging you." The best part of the day, though, was in order to get that attitude from Steve Martin, he was, pretending to be the tour guide. He started doing the voice that he does like in The Jerk. Yeah. And he doesn't really do that anymore, and so he just out of the blue just started going like, "Hey people, it's Judd Apatow's house." And just to watch him do that. It was the only time I really worked with him. I've only met him a few times. He's always very, very nice.
I had a similar experience with Henri Cartier-Bresson, who was like my hero, and that was like the first photograph I ever saw that affected me.
You guys have a thing about walking, you have share a common bond about walking up to your idols at their homes.
Actually, this photograph here about Bresson is like, this is in the Tuileries Gardens. And this is the Louvre in the background, and I would always stay in this hotel, and little did I know that his apartment was like, if I would have turned around and pointed up, that's where he was. And so it was years later that I infiltrated his place and spent just a fantastic afternoon with him, and it was just like a dream come true. He was the only photographer.
Were you in his studio?
Yeah, it was in his apartment. He was getting ready to leave that afternoon on a trip, and it was just really an amazing thing. And after we had this meeting, we talked about drawing a lot, and he wrote something in it, and he would not tell me. I said, "What does it say?" And he said, "I'm not going to tell you." And I walked out on the street, and the first thing, I stopped a person on the street, Rue de Rivoli, and I said, "Well, what does this say?" And they said, "To Matt, in memory of a tormented afternoon." And I was like, that's it, man.
It was funny because I saw Judd gush and blush on our shoot when we went over to Carl Reiner's house.
Oh, that's right.
And Carl Reiner and Mel Brooks in the same house.
Well, they're best friends. I mean, they hang out together almost every night and watch movies and
eat.
And eat and
Chicken.
Hey, chicken. Yeah, Mel Brooks is like, "I'll be back later with the sliced chicken." And but it's very sweet. I mean, they're both. Mel just turned 87, and Carl Reiner's 91, and they're both, doing very well. They're really sharp and hilarious. Yeah, and they watch Breaking Bad together now. But that,
and hopefully girls.
Yeah, exactly.
Did you ask them?
I don't know if I asked them. I don't know if that's
seen my new
on their thing.
I'm working on.
But they're very sweet. But it's funny because you get older and you forget how many episodes of the Dick Van Dyke Show I watched as a kid. And everything Mel Brooks did was probably the first comedy film that I became obsessed with as a kid. Blazing Saddles, Young Frankenstein, all those movies came out when I was 7 years old. I think it wired my brain. I don't even know how it happened. I just know that somewhere my brain was just building circuitry from watching these stories. Yeah. And also their compassionate way of telling stories. They're very humanistic, there's very positive message behind everything that they did. Right. And that's what I always try to do even when we're doing kind of bawdy comedy, that there's there's really some heart to it and some ideas about how you should try to be as a human being in the movies.
Can you tell us about your 30-year marriage to Tom Waits in photography?
Well, basically, I was doing illustration, and I wanted to get into photography, kind of get out of my studio, out into the world. And so they'd called me and they wanted me to do a painted portrait of him, but I thought, and he wasn't with the label anymore, so I basically tracked him down, tracked through his manager, and said, if he lets me...
You do a lot of that kind of,
well, if he lets me,
just tracking people down.
Yeah, and there's somebody trying to track you down today and track you down today and track me down today.
Yeah, we're all tracking each other.
And they're going to get us. They're going to find us. But I said, if he comes over and he lets me photograph him, I'll let him approve the photograph. I was desperate and young and dumb and all that stuff.
That's a good trick.
Yeah, it worked out quite well.
Good job.
Almost 30 years later. And then this was a photograph I just took of him last summer when I was working on a music video for him on this a song called Hell Broke Loose, this anti-war song. This is a portrait for his wife, and her name is Kathleen Brennan, and so I put a KB brand in his neck. And so I'm coming kind of full circle to take this photograph. These are photographs of him, some live shots of him, which I've done over the years.
This is a great story where...
This is him playing the last note of the last song on a concert, and he's playing it with his pinky. And
his last finger.
Yeah, he's got glitter. He's got glitter on the top and his little crinkled notes. He's just an extraordinary person.
I have an interesting Tom Waits story, which is I put a song from that album you did the cover for, Alice, called I'm Still Here, in This Is 40. Powerful song, and it's a heartbreaker. And it was so powerful in the movie, and I had it in for all the previews. And then at some point I realized, like, it's too powerful for the moment. Like, it takes us to such a deep, dark place with how they feel about each other that I kind of can't get back from it.
Wow.
And it's one of my favorite songs of all time. And it was like a heartbreaker to take it out. And I put in this Loudon Wainwright song that he sings with his son Rufus Wainwright called Days That We Die, which is all about arguing and when will it stop. But that's what happens with movies, is you just start like placing things.
That seems like such a lighter song too. Boy, that really worked out.
Exactly. Well, that's a dark song too.
Wow.
But you know, it's funny because you go like, but 10% too much, and I can't recover.
Hey Matt, what is it like to be able to illustrate something that controversial?
When I started, I first wanted to be a political cartoonist. I grew up in the era of Watergate, came of age. I was doing political cartoons for my local paper when I was 13 years old. So for something like this, to be able to have that kind of mantle or that opportunity is something that's I feel very fortunate. It's something I'm really humbled by using myself. Like, this is a picture, I took this picture of my basement, and like I'll take like a piece of black gray felt and put it around me, and then I'll set up the camera and set it on the timer and run and take the picture.
This is your basement in Baghdad?
My basement in Long Island.
Oh, sorry, I got confused.
A lot of basements on Long Island are covered in blood.
Yes.
Oddly.
Mine's digitally covered.
In a sense too, like your work as a filmmaker, you really start from a place of like, authentic moments.
Yeah. That's how Knocked Up came about. Was Seth Rogen was pitching me a big special effects comedy, like a Ghostbusters kind of movie. And I said to him, I think you're funny just standing there. In that moment, I go, you could just get someone pregnant. That would be enough for like a whole movie. So my argument against doing that, I realized was a good idea for a movie. Like, then I just started laughing. But then Seth just directed a movie called This Is the End with Evan Goldberg as writing partner. And it kind of is that movie in a way, that not the exact one, but that's what he wanted to do, is a big imaginative end of the world sci-fi kind of movie. Right. And it's amazing. It's hilarious. It does capture their hearts and their spirits because he loves that. Right. But for me, I'm generally stuck with the how do you be happy? How do you not kill each other? How do you get along with other people? And maybe if I felt like I resolved some of that, I would add the other elements, but I don't think I ever will, because I'm so lost and spiritually lost. I don't have answers to anything that I love watching people try to figure it out.
One of the stories that I became familiar with, your name, Matt, was when you did the Texas prison system.
You were going into a world where all the dysfunction, all the pain, all the stuff was like right there. And every cliche that I'd ever seen in a prison movie was there. I had people shoot welding sparks at me, spit on me, just all kinds of crazy. I mean, these were dark, you understand.
Silence of the Lambs.
Well, you understand why prisons exist. You understand why these places have to be. But within that was this unbelievable, like if you were a filmmaker or whatever, you had gone into the most incredible set that was already built, cast beyond your wildest imaginations with these characters that were just so deep and dark and troubled and all that. And basically I found that all that tension, all that stuff, was the thing that pulled me in. That was the thing that drove me to go deeper into it and connect with it.
What was this
here?
moment? Yeah.
They trained the dogs to hunt down any escaped prisoners. So these guys worked on the dog detail, and so they would go out in the morning and they'd put on this protective suit and they'd go out and they'd hide. And then I went with the dog sergeant. Here I am with this $3,000 Hasselblad that I'm barely figuring out how to use with this 200 millimeter lens on it. And there I am, like, not trained on a horse, romping through the rural Texas farmland with these dogs just running all in and out and stuff. And then we get there and this guy's there, and then the dog's sick on him, and they just were trying to tear him apart. And I was trying to take pictures from the horse. And I said, God, I would love to get closer. He goes, you can get down, you can go over there. They're not after you, they're after him. So I walked out with no suit on or anything.
How do they know they're after
with like
him?
with a normal like 80 millimeter lens or whatever, and just walked right up. One of the dogs came over, sniffed me a second, it's not your day, and just went back after this guy.
That's amazing.
And then out of that, I found that this guy is in charge of taking care of the dogs. And so he has to stay up all night, and these guys love these dogs. And so they stay up with them, they coddle them, and for some of them, maybe it's the first thing they got a chance to love in their life. I know it sounds cliche, but when you get in that world, you see these things exist for a reason. And then these guys have to train these dogs to want to kill them, and it just perpetuated that whole thing of the cycle of these people with lack of opportunity, hope, or future, or whatever. So you find these things, and it's like the most incredible, like, dark Shakespearean play, and you're just moving through this set and these characters, and you're just composing and connecting, and I also think like the stuff that Judd does, like in Knocked Up, which is one of my all-time favorite comedies. I mean, really was the humanity that's put in that, the way that people are personally challenged to face themselves. I think it's all a service.
When you think about a photograph that kind of started in terms of your affinity for the process, what do you think that would be?
The actor Kevin Corrigan sent me a postcard with that famous picture of the circus performer, the little person smoking a cigarette in the rain. That was the first photograph I ever bought, and I thought it really captured a comedian's life really well. It's like a miserable, exhausted person.
But hilarious.
But yeah, it's kind of like funny, but painful, and it's very
It was so
emotional.
melancholy, that photograph.
Yes.
But it was also I think just photographically, like, it really had that grainy, dark room, soupy feeling to it, which was, made it beautiful.
I like photography where I really feel people's energy, like their attitude, in the photograph. So I bought a few Richard Avedon photographs of comedians when they're very old. Right. So I bought this Groucho Marx photograph he took when Groucho Marx was in his mid-80s, and he took another one of Buster Keaton. And I, for some reason, I just put them up in my office because I think, like, well, that hopefully is going to be me. Yeah. This is where it ends.
A sweet reminder that maybe somebody will take your picture when you're that old.
Hopefully, I don't know. Neither of them look that happy, but I know it's like, oh, I guess this is the path, and maybe I could be a little happier than those two guys.
They made a lot of other people happy.
Exactly.
Here we come to Fishbowl. Very exciting moment where we get to ask each other really important questions.
Okay.
And come back with just snappy answers.
What's something you hope to photograph but haven't yet? Snowden? When something like that happens, do you think, oh, it'd be great to be able to talk about that and make a cover for that? It is almost the extension of the Abu Ghraib.
Yeah, I think you become, if I was to line up my images from the time I started doing drawings for the, how I paid my way through art school is doing drawings for the opinion page of the LA Times on Sunday. I started when I was like 20 or something. And if you lined up my work, it's a kind of chronology of the world's like ills. And I start with, Iran counters later, but bombs for hostage release, and then it goes through AIDS, and then AIDS starts with in all the different incarnations of AIDS, and so basically going through this thing, so it almost became like this visual timeline of all this stuff. So I got in this groove of just expecting that, the busiest week I ever had in my career was after 9/11. I ended up doing the cover of Esquire, Sports Illustrated, some stuff for LA Times, thing for New York Times. So what happened is that in my own way, I was completely powerless to what was going on, but this is what I did. And my friends were in there, they'd already had their covers, and they said, we got to junk this cover and we got to change it. So not only could I get my statement and my feelings and emotions out about what happened, but in some really very, very small part, what I do was able to be lent to the process and help my friends, because they were all in here in their offices, and the buildings were literally smoking while they're trying to lay these pages out and do their job.
Judd, what's the funniest photo you've ever seen?
This isn't the funniest picture I've ever seen, but just a very funny one was the Art Streiber picture for the 40-Year-Old Virgin poster. That was the first movie I directed. I wasn't even at the photo shoot. I didn't even know what they were doing.
Really?
And then they just one day I went into the offices at Universal and they just showed me the poster, which I guess was kind of based off like a strange looking Mentos ad from Europe or something. And it kind of sold the whole movie. This the look in his eye, and Steve is so funny, and Art just captured something that when you put the billboard up, even though Steve wasn't a star, people thought, oh, I need to see this movie. There's something going on with this guy. Yeah. And I also love the picture you took of Sacha Baron Cohen in his green bathing suit, which is
in his thong. I feel like I'm the luckiest man in the world today to be able to sit with two of my friends and two people that I respect so much, Matt Mahurin, Judd Apatow, just delightful people in every way, and thank you for being so open and sharing with us on Capture. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.
How do you not kill each other? How do you get along with other people? And maybe if I felt like I resolved some of that, I would add the other elements. I don't think I ever will, because I'm so lost and spiritually lost. I don't have answers to anything that I love watching people try to figure it out.
The busiest week I ever had in my career was after 9/11. Not only could I statement my feelings and emotions out about what happened, but in some really very, very small part, I was able to help my friends, because they were all in here in their offices, and the buildings were literally smoking while they're trying to lay these pages out and do their job.
That was the first photograph I ever bought, and I thought it really captured a comedian's life really well. It's a miserable, exhausted person.
Pharrell Williams here.
Hi, I'm Joy Bryant.
I'm Henri Cartier-Bresson.
I'm Tom Colicchio.
I'm Dr. Frank Lipman, the host of On the Table,
The host of Across the Board.
Host of ARTST Talk.
Host of Hooked Up.
Host of the show, Be Well Week, Be Well Weekend, on the Reserve channel.
It's only on Reserve.
Did you know that you can follow my show on social media sites like Facebook?
Follow us on Twitter.
If you're a fan of my show, hit the like button.
All of the above.
Share me with your friends.
Treat yourself. Check out a new episode of my show, Hooked Up.
And if you want to leave comments, feedbacks, ideas, whatever, love to hear from you. Leave a comment.
And if you don't want to miss the show, be sure to subscribe.
The one that's down here, or is it here? Somewhere down here.
Thanks for watching the Reserve channel.
Only on YouTube. Throw caution to the wind and ask yourself what rules.